What's up, wildflowers? Welcome back to another podcast episode. I just want to say before we start, I, for some reason, am feeling a bit loopy. This is my fifth, I think fourth, fifth? I can't even count anymore. Time that I've been in the quote unquote studio in the past week. I've just been recording episodes back to back so that when I go back to school, I don't have to worry about not having time or not having quiet space, or when I do have time, it's 3 a.m. and I don't want to wake anybody up. So, yeah, that's the dilemma we're facing. I've been doing a lot of talking just myself over the past few days. My vocal cords can feel it. My salivary glands can feel it. I'm feeling it, so please bear with me today. But I wanted to do something, a bit of a deeper, super powerful conversation today. And not that all of our conversations aren't deep and powerful and meaningful, especially to me. But today I wanted to touch on a very sensitive topic, something that this episode is specifically for women, something that we all go through and or have gone through or will go through at some point in our life, just simply because of our gender. So today I want to talk about misogyny and gaslighting. Two topics, two things I have also encountered in life, and things that just frustrate me. And another thing on the list of things that just baffle me, that the human mind, especially specifically the human mind of one specific gender, can work that way. I don't know. It's just, I don't even know how to explain it further than that. It's just such a baffling thing. But I figured we'd talk about that today, and I picked a few articles to go through. One is from Medium, and another is from, I don't know how to say this, but it's asanet.org, asanet.org. I will link these articles in the description / show notes of this episode. But I'm going to go through and just read some of the things that these authors wrote. I have skimmed through both of these articles, but I didn't really plan this episode like I did with a couple other informational episodes, because I figured, you know what, let's just have a fun, stress-free episode where, I don't feel like I have to write things out and bullet point and all that. I figured I'd just learn as I talk to you guys about it and try to understand along the way. So, with the first episode, or the first article from it's asanet.org. Okay, that makes total sense. So from ASA, it's the American Sociology Review, and the article is titled The Sociology of Gaslighting. Reading the abstract, let me see, is the author male or female? Ooh, Miss Paige L. Sweet. Okay. So, in the abstract, she writes, gaslighting, a type of psychological abuse aimed at making victims seem or feel quote-unquote crazy, creating a quote-unquote surreal interpersonal environment, has captured public attention. Despite the popularity of the term, sociologists have ignored gaslighting, leaving it to be theorized by psychologists. However, the article argues that gaslighting is primarily a sociological rather than a psychological phenomenon. Gaslighting should be understood as rooted in social inequalities, including gender, and executed in power-laden intimate relationships. The theory developed here argues that gaslighting is consequential when perpetrators mobilize gender-based stereotypes and structural and institutional inequalities against victims to manipulate their realities. I'm not even going to read that sentence. Basically, she did a case study. She took a bunch of people and asked them questions. These are people that have been in domestic abuse relationships, and they have also taken part in group therapy sessions, so they're used to this kind of questioning and response. And she basically took a survey of all of them, asked them some generic questions. But right now, before I get into that, I'm just going to read her interpretation and writing of the history of gaslighting and the term, why it's called gaslighting. So she writes, George Cukor's Cukor's 1944 film Gaslight tells the story of Paula and her new husband Gregory, who sets about the task of isolating her and making her believe she's insane. His eponymous tactic is to dim and brighten the gaslights and then insist she is imagining it. Gregory aims to undermine Paula's sense of self and everyday life, to confuse and distort her reality such that she must accept his imposed reality in place of her own. Today, gaslighting is an increasingly ubiquitous term used to describe the mind-manipulating strategies of abusive people in both politics and interpersonal relationships. Dozens of online checklists instruct readers on the warning signs of gaslighting in their intimate relationships. And then she goes on to list a few historic examples of gaslighting. It says, despite its growing recognition as an abusive power tactic, sociologists have ignored gaslighting, leaving it for the psychologists to study. This, I argue, is a mistake. Gaslighting is fundamentally a social phenomenon. Engaging in abusive mental manipulation certainly involves psychological dynamics, but scholars have thus far disregarded the social characteristics that actually give gaslighting its power. Specifically, gaslighting is effective when it is rooted in social inequalities, especially gender and sexuality, and executed in power-laden intimate relationships. When perpetrators mobilize gender-based stereotypes, structural inequalities, and institutional vulnerabilities against victims with whom they are in an intimate relationship, gaslighting becomes not only effective, but devastating. Decades of research reveal that no form of abuse can be extracted from social context. Anyone can use manipulative tactics against anyone else, but oh my god, I'm so sorry, guys. But such actions only transform victims' lives, becoming abusive when they are embedded in relations of power. The second point is critical because women do not typically have the cultural, economic, and political capital necessary to gaslight men. Gaslighting is therefore a gendered phenomenon. In fact, whether or not it is exercised by a male-bodied person against a female-bodied person, gaslighting tactics construct victims in terms of feminized irrationality. So, if I'm interpreting that last bit correct, technically a female can gaslight, but it will be against another female. If you listen to my episode a couple weeks back about masculine and feminine energy, I talked about internalized patriarchy, which is basically doing what is done to you, the negative things, to keep your higher rank, to be kind of at the top of the food chain. It's a tactic of survival. So if I'm understanding that correctly, someone correct me if you understand it better, but basically females can gaslight, but it will be against another female to keep her higher status and rank. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm hearing from that. She goes on to write, gaslighting can also prevent domestic violence victims from accessing institutional resources that will help them escape the abuse. Indeed, the very institutions set up to help victims can become part of the gaslighting process. Gaslighting should be of interest to sociologists then, because domestic violence is widespread, and gaslighting is a core feature of intimate abuse. To sum up what she says for the rest of that, she goes on to talk about and give examples, real life examples of male abusers using therapy actually to convince women that they're crazy, and or threatening them to say things. One example she gave was a husband after, okay, so basically the mother had a baby, and she ended up going into postpartum depression. At the time, she didn't know that it was postpartum depression. She had this feeling that she should leave her son because her son deserved a better mother, and she basically told her husband about how she was feeling, voiced, her thoughts and everything, and he was saying, "You're crazy, like, this is crazy talk. Like, what are you saying? You're crazy." And he then threatened her and said, "You can go to a therapist. She'll tell you you're crazy. This is all fine." And because he continually would tell her, basically, prove me wrong, tell me I'm wrong, I dare you, tell me I'm wrong, basically challenging her, she wouldn't do it. Because what do you do? You're stuck in that situation, and you're like, do you go against your husband? Because what are the consequences of that? Just, to see what a stranger is going to say? or do you go to that stranger and take that chance or those risks? And so basically she was stuck at a crossroads, and she ended up not going to the therapist. I don't know what happened after that, but she didn't end up going, and he used that as to say, like, look, they can prove that I'm right, and kind of putting themselves at the level of a professional, as if they had done the same schooling, the same things. They were like, I know, like, I just know this is true, this is right, this is how it is, prove me wrong, I dare you, and putting them up to that challenge. So the intro to the Medium article was, the day after Donald Trump was elected, Merriam-Webster reported that misogyny was one of the top words searched that day, along with racist, bigot, and xenophobe. This isn't surprising, considering Trump has repeatedly denigrated women and referred to them as pigs, dogs, and slobs. Let's start with defining 3 key terms: patriarchy, sexism, and misogyny. These terms are different mechanisms used to suppress or constrain women and women's opportunities to make them secondary or subservient to those of men, terms that reinforce each other but also differ in key ways. Patriarchy is a social structure characterized by male dominance and female oppression. For example, before women were allowed to vote or participate in office, the United States functioned as a formal patriarchy. Although women are no longer legally prevented from assuming leadership roles, this system's legacy can be seen in current low rates of women in leadership. Today, only 20% of members of Congress and 4% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. In this way, the United States still operates as a patriarchy. Sexism, a belief system or discriminatory attitude about women of all races and sexual orientations that deems them inferior to men or less capable than men to perform certain tasks or jobs. When a man assumes a woman would not be a good public official or CEO because men are better leaders, that's sexist. But misogyny is darker and angrier than sexism. Misogyny takes attitude and acts on them in a hostile or violent way, and is often revealed through demeaning or denigrating comments. For example, if a woman gets a job over a man and the man responds by calling the woman a series of gender vulgarities, that's misogyny. It's not just that these terms exist independently. These terms and these phenomena operate in tandem and in combination with other structural forces of oppression. Class, race, gender identity, and sexual orientation combine with sexism and misogyny to produce different, often more dangerous variations of oppression and prejudice. Misogynoir, coined by queer black feminist Moya, is it Maya or Moya? Moya. Bailey describes the racialized misogyny that black women face, and transmisogyny, a confluence of transphobia and misogyny, coined by Julia Serrano, describes the misogyny trans and gender nonconforming individuals on the feminine side of the gender spectrum face. The pervasive violence against trans women and bathroom bills that ban trans women from using women's bathrooms, thus putting them at risk of more violence, are examples of trans misogyny in our society today. Trans women of color are disproportionately targeted by this violence. Trans misogynoir refers to the unique intersection of misogyny, racism, and transphobia that black trans women face. But explanations aside, why are we so insistent on defining these terms? Defining these terms is critical for designing solutions to address them. For example, a law that prohibits discrimination based on gender when making a hiring decision may be an effective strategy to combat sexism in a particular field, but more may be needed to repair a work environment infected with misogyny and deeper hostility towards women. If misogyny is prevalent in our workspaces and labor markets, then discriminatory pay may be falsely thought of as fair by sexist attitudes toward women's value and abilities, and misogyny may prevent women from exercising their rights to equal pay due to justified fear of retaliation for asking for a pay increase or promotion. The bottom line is that individuals who identify as women face sexism and misogyny daily, and if we want to effectively fight it, it's important for us to understand that these terms mean what these terms mean and how women of different races, social classes, and sexual orientations experience it. Looking forward, we must fight both explicit misogyny as well as work to tackle more subtle institutional misogyny if we hope to dismantle patriarchy and instill women's empowerment in our society. So that is a summary of what Medium said. Yeah, that's a lot to take in. I think one place I want to start is the obvious, the workplace. the workplace, and I'll also tie in school. I think starting with school, we all know this. We've all gone through this. Lo and behold, the dress code. And I will do an episode about the education system, the school, academics, non-academic, all of that. But since we're doing institutional misogyny, let's talk about the dress code. We have all experienced either... I'm so sorry, I keep hitting the mic. We have all experienced either being dress coded or witnessing your friend get dress coded or hearing about the irrational dress code and then actually dressing to follow it, being too afraid of what will happen if you do break the dress code. And might I just add, it's ridiculous. And ridiculous is at the bottom of the list of strong words that I want to use to describe the dress code. Seriously, because if you think about it, what is... And maybe some of you guys have had different responses to it, but what is the number one response to the dress code? Specifically, looking at sleeveless tops or shoulders showing. Oh, well, your shoulders are distracting to the boys. I don't want to hear it, mama. Like, that's ridiculous. You're telling me that, again, just another example of having to please men and to make them comfortable in an environment, or to put ourselves / be responsible for the risk of being harmed. And that's ridiculous. It shouldn't be, oh, you as a female don't wear this. It should be, you, boy, keep your eyes in the textbooks and up at the board. It should never be you're being a distraction. If that's the case, take away their skateboards, take away their phones. I mean, there are a lot of distractions in school, and a body part should not be one of them. Especially, you're talking about a non-private body part. A shoulder? Are you kidding me? A shoulder and a stomach? Like, that's the best you got? Because that's, again, like, that's ridiculous. And I've screamed this over and over and over again. I remember getting dress coded for the first time in 8th grade. First day of 8th grade. I had been to that school before, and it seemed like the first few days, all of the APs were out to get me. And that was also not one of my first, but adding on to the first few experiences of racial inequality in the South. I grew up in the North my whole life. I was born in Jersey, lived in Illinois for 7 years, lived in Alaska for 4 years. I was up in the North. Like, I was good. I never experienced any of that until we moved to Texas, and it was just, oh my gosh, white supremacy should basically be painted on the Texan flag. Let me just say that first and foremost. And obviously I have friends that are, white, and I haven't had any issues with them, but as a whole, Texas could not be any more of a conservative state, and it shows, and it's ridiculous. And I experienced that when I first got here, and then it got real bad in 8th grade. First day of school, I walked in with shorts, and they dress coded me. And the worst thing is that, first of all, it was a white lady that stopped me in the hallway, and what she said to me made me, like, really mad. She had the nerve to say, no, she didn't say, who let you walk out of the house like that. She said, did you look in the mirror before you walked out of the house today? And that's how she addressed me. She didn't say anything about my shorts, so I didn't even know what she was talking about. And when I tell you I was about ready to punch her in the face because I was so confused, I was like, excuse me? And she goes, those shorts are too short. And I looked down and I said, you can't see my butt. And she goes, they need to be mid-thigh. I'm like, do you know how tall I am? I'm like 5'3". I measured my thighs. My thighs are 14 inches, and that was 2 years ago, so who knows how long they are now. She sent me, so white lady dress coded me, but she sent me to a black AP, and that's what pissed me off the most. I walk in there, and then she had the nerve to reprimand me, And that's coming back to that that internalized patriarchy. She's a black woman, so she's got to look good in front of all these white people and keep her job and do the disciplining. But then I'm sitting here like, you're supposed to be on my side. You know good and well they didn't dress code me because my shorts are too short. It's because I'm a tall black girl, and they seem to have a problem with that. And they got to find something to pick on me for, because I was telling my friends about it too, and of course they didn't understand, but I still had to talk to somebody, telling them that all the popular white girls were walking around in their short behind tennis skirts, weren't even playing tennis, just walking around in these short little skirts. And I mean, one wrong move, walking up the stairs, you could see everything. And not once had they ever been pulled over. And it just, when things started adding up and when the puzzle pieces started being put together, it just pissed me off. The next day, when I got up in the morning and went to get dressed, I measured my leg. And when I tell you, my 14-inch thigh had my shorts hit at exactly 7 inches, I said, mid-thigh, my behind, yes I am. And I walked to school. Got there, happened again. Go into Johnson's office, and she goes, oh, you're here again? We talked about this. Come on now. And she goes, I don't know what school you were at before, but that's not how we do things here. I said, I've been here for 2 years now, and not once have I ever been pulled over for my shorts. And I said, actually, I measured my legs this morning. I have a 14-inch thigh, and these shorts are at 7. I was pissed. And I wanted to punch her too. And she has the nerve to get out a meter stick. I said, we're really doing this right now. She put that meter stick up to my leg, and everything I said rang true. And she sat ghost-faced and had nothing else to say. But of course, she still had to come up with something. So she goes, yeah, well, when we say mid-thigh, we really mean lower down in the thigh. Don't hit me with thigh. And that is a part of the gaslighting and saying females can, what I was just talking about, like females can gaslight, but it would be to another female to stay in that higher rank. If y'all meant lower thigh, say lower thigh. But you said mid-thigh. What does mid mean? Middle. What is half of 14? 7. That is the middle. And so I'm like, don't start coming up with these new things and these quick, witty tactics to try to make it seem like I'm crazy and I'm still in the wrong, even though I'm doing exactly what you told me to do, but you still don't like it because at the end of the day, you want to be right. You want me to walk out of here with a slip or something that you can put on my transcript to make you feel like you've done your job correctly. I don't want to hear it. I'm sorry if I screamed through that entire thing, but that literally just pissed me off. And I actually forgot that I went through all of that until just reliving it right now. Just, oh my gosh. But that's, yeah. So that was a perfect example of like feminine gaslighting toward another feminine and internalized patriarchy that I had experienced. And then as far as where it goes to males, let me go back to the article. The paragraph, going back to the paragraph where it said, for example, before women were allowed to vote or participate in office, the United States functioned as a formal patriarchy. Although women are no longer legally prevented from assuming leadership roles, the system's legacy can be seen in current low rates of women in leadership. There's gotta be something, and I can do more research and do a part 2 to this, but there's gotta be something, and I mean, I guess, yeah, internalized patriarchy and gaslighting and misogyny in the system that not only keeps women from running, but keeps them from winning. Because there's a fair enough amount of women that run, but they just don't get in. There's something that confuses me about non-feminist females. And I know that that's not just me, but there's something genuinely that confuses me about non-feminist females, because it's like, you really have allowed Western society or your family or whatever history to make you allow yourself to have such little respect for yourself that you genuinely, and I mean genuinely, because there are people out there that truly, truly, truly believe that a woman's place is to stay in the house and cook and clean and not say anything. And that's beyond sad. Like, that has genuinely been brainwashed in and ingrained in many women's minds. And they're still stuck in that older way of living. And it's insane. And I don't know if that's what's still running the lack of representation in the White House, in any sort of higher law anything. It's if these women aren't voting, their husbands are gaslighting them into not going out to vote, not going out to the polls, not getting registered, or they are doing these things, but they have a worm in their ear telling them, don't vote for females, or don't do this, or don't do, like what's with that? That genuinely confuses me. And it's on the list of other things that, like I said before, just baffle me, but also, like, how can people genuinely be so blind to or so unwilling to accept what's right in their face? Like, that, I don't know. Like, how can people be so blind to toxicity? Or, like, allow themselves to just think that it's just easier to sit still, look pretty, that kind of thing. But it's just weird, and it's scary to think about. It's like a horror film. It's like, we're not in the Pilgrim age anymore. Like, you're allowed to vote. Like, you've got these rights, exercise them. And that's something I will never understand. That's something I will never sympathize, let alone empathize with. Because that's just weird. And that's scary. Like, that sounds like the plot to a horror movie. Just a couple thousand, maybe even 1 million women just living far from city, urban civilization, still living in, like, pilgrim type ways and in their own societies, still going by these things where the man is almighty and you follow him even if he's wrong. You don't tell him he's wrong. You don't think that he's wrong. You change your way of thinking to tailor to him and what's going on. And that's just, that's not okay. Ew, that's, no. That, and that bothers me. But there's gotta be, like, specifically talking about the leadership roles. Like, I wonder, like, seriously, what's up with that? Like, obviously, there are, I'm sure, majority men not voting for women, but, like, where are the women at? Because if I'm not mistaken, specifically in the United States, isn't there more, a higher female population? Which gender has the higher population? Total population in the United States by gender from 2010 to 2025 in millions. In 2020, the male percentage is 161.37 and the female percentage is 168.63. So if I'm taking this data correctly, there's more females than men in the United States. So where are we at? So I'm sure an estimated number of conservative women. Wow, I can't spell. Okay, I'm not even getting any, like, I just want a straight answer. I hate when I Google something and there's not that, like, big text box with your answer just right there and you gotta, like, dig through articles. I don't have time for this. But, like, where are we at? Because if you take conservative women out of the equation, because most conservative women probably vote in favor of the men because that's what they've been brainwashed to do, and that's what they're used to, and they're not comfortable doing anything else. But I don't know how much that's got to be a very small percentage though of us. So like, we got to figure out what's up with that. That's insane. Today, only 20% of members of Congress and 4% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. Well, there's also probably corruption in these systems, rigging women out of elections. So that's definitely a factor. So subtract conservative women. What other factors are probably harming this number? Let me see. Lack of campaign reach or lack of campaign help. That's a huge thing, because if you know anything about the world we're in now, social media reach is huge. I mean, no one knows you exist if they can't reach you through their phone or their TV. So if people aren't volunteering or willing to spread the word about who's being or who's running for these spots, then that's a huge factor in who reaches. Because you know how if you guys are of voting age, if you've hit the ballots yet or anything like that, you'll know sometimes you skim the ballot and you're like, oh, well, who's this? Or right before, when you're hearing about all of the when you're hearing on the news about who's going to be on the ballots, I know everybody at some point has said, oh, who's this? Because they haven't had that reach. Either they haven't had the SEO online, or they haven't had the social media reach, or they haven't had public gatherings or higher numbers at their speeches or anything like that. So that's a huge thing. So there are quite a few factors. Yeah, shoot. I definitely knew it was something that we had to fix, but I don't think it hit as much. Like, whoa, why? That's insane. Wow. Yeah. Yep. And then I think another factor could definitely be intimidating men just in that position. If you have an opponent that you're running against, themselves or their campaigning team or their press team or whoever could definitely be purposely intimidating the female opponent to drop out. Wow. Yeah. That's insane. I've never really thought of it like that. I'm like, we have all these people that go out and vote, and yeah, wow. And that's it. I mean, and just overall, like, the main thing is the gaslighting and misogyny, just keeping women out of these offices. And those are the examples. Wow. Yeah, I definitely got a new perspective on something today. And then back to what they were saying at the bottom, defining these terms is critical for designing solutions to address them. So, for example, a law that prohibits discrimination based on gender when making a hiring decision may be an effective strategy to combat sexism in a particular field, but more may be needed to repair a work environment infected with misogyny and deeper hostility toward women. I do have an example of that. I was watching Good Trouble a couple weeks ago, and one of the characters, Mariana, she now works at I think it's a gaming or tech or software company or something, and she works with a bunch of guys. I think there's maybe only like 8 women in her building, let alone her field. So, and then specifically her group, she's the only female in her group. The whole time that she was there, I think she was there for all of a year when season 2 started, and she really started, like, her character started portraying and showing just the working environment. The first red flag was that they would never put her in any of the projects. They would never include her in any of the projects. She was always doing all the scrap work. So if certain codes needed to be cleaned up or anything like that, that would go to her. but she never got to put out any of the ideas, whether it was in the simple group meeting. I think they were blue group or something, or group B or something. So whether it was in that group or in the company-wide meetings, she would always be looked over. She would be saying things out, she would raise her hand, but no one would call on her, no one would listen to her. And when she did have a good idea, they would take it and claim it as their own. So the head of Group B would hear Mariana's idea, shoot it down, and be like, no, that's dumb. But then go to the company meeting the next day and be like, hey, I've got this idea, and say the exact same idea she had. So stealing ideas, discrediting women, that's a huge thing, especially in the workplace, especially when you're in like a corporate situation like that. It is very, very prominent. It happens all the time. And it was worse because the higher level, the CEO of the company, he was doing it too. And if you go watch the show, they ended up kind of solving that and working toward it. She ended up forming all of the women together in a group and problem solving and figuring out ways to be more assertive and be heard in the company. But in the beginning, like, if you got the CEO participating in that stuff and that's the highest you can get to on your floor, then obviously you're not going to be able to dilute the problem or, you know, do away with that. Sure, the hiring process, totally fine. She got hired by a female. But once you get hired, you're talking about actually the job you're going to be in all day, every week, for years. And if you're dealing with that stuff in the company, then it doesn't matter how easy the hiring process was, or, you know, what little misogyny there was in the hiring process, because you've still got that day in and day out. So that was a huge example, and watching that was still just like, wow. Like, again, I knew these things were happening, but just seeing like examples like that, it just kind of gets crazier and like more surreal. So for situations like that, again, hiring process, if that's fine, great. But if you're not doing anything as a company to, you know, to watch out for those things and notice when your female employees are being harped on like that, and saying something about it, threatening people's jobs, firing people, downsizing if you need to, or just, I mean, completely just kicking people to a new floor, a new level. Like, there's something that makes these companies uncomfortable with changing in such a way. There's something that makes them uncomfortable about making men, employees in their company, uncomfortable. It's like, if it comes to the females being displaced or moved, that's fine. But if it comes to the men, it's like constantly trying to make them happy, constantly trying to keep them in the company because they're quote unquote bringing in the most money. But also, you talk about unfair wages and pay, then of course the men are bringing more because they're being encouraged more by their pay. They are going to want to work harder, or they don't even have to work as hard because they're just men. And it's just like, you put men on the market and anyone will buy anything from them because they're quote unquote convincing or whatever it is. And it's just like this whole, like with everything else, this whole cycle of things that just puts women down. And it's like, they're sitting here sometimes, more often than not, working 3 times more than their male counterpart, getting paid 3 times less, and still having to show up to work every day and answer to people. And especially if you talk about a newbie coming in, that's just too many things, too many targets on their back. That just doesn't keep them in the company, and it's discouraging. And it's this chain that then becomes intergenerational trauma of just women not feeling like they're good enough to have a higher, powerful role or any sort of important role in a company, and us shying away from those opportunities and things like that. And it's just, again, it's baffling. It is just so insane to think about that this is something that's been built. Like, just society itself is so hard to grasp, and that's been a part of my like deep thinking, just society itself, and trying to like wrap my head around that. And it's disgusting. And then one of the ways that gaslighting ties into misogyny is that when a man is being misogynistic and a woman calls it out, on the rare occasion or whatever that it is, then the man begins to come up with all these excuses and all these things and starts pulling stuff up from his sleeve and saying, that's not what I'm doing. No, this, and this, blah, blah, blah. And I've witnessed it so many times from people that I definitely should call out on the spot, but I'm not going to do that. I'm trying to be, anyways. I've experienced it, going to people and saying one thing, or having a man come to me, or a boy even, and say, this is what you did and this is what happened and this is unacceptable. And then me saying, like, coming in with my rebuttal, which is the truth, and then him saying, no, that's not what I'm saying, it's this. And then altering and fabricating this new story or new way that makes it seem like, oh, no, that's not what I meant. But really, the first thing is what I meant. But since the first thing that I said was not actually what you did, I need to come up with a new thing that you did do, or keep fabricating this until it comes into something that you did do, so that I can walk out of this situation, my chest being a bit bigger, me feeling a bit stronger and better about myself, my ego being exploded, and I can win this conversation. Because if we know anything about men, it's that everything is a competition. And yes, there are competitive women. And yes, I am generalizing. But you know what? I don't want to hear, it's not all men, because I'm so sick of that. Get it all the time. No dip. Not everybody is the same. Not everybody fits the generalizations and stereotypes, of course. And if you aren't a part of that, but you feel like you have to defend yourself, you should look at your internal misogyny, because it's just, I don't know why. And I've had conversations about this with my guy friends. It's like when they generalize women, or generalize blacks, or generalize Hispanics, or generalize people of the LGBTQ community, like, that's okay. But as soon as you generalize them, well, it's not all men, blah, blah, blah. Shut up. Because if it's not you, you shouldn't feel the need to defend yourself. And it's not like men really have this burning desire to protect people that they don't even know just because they're the same gender. It's not like that. And so, yes, I'm going to generalize, but if you don't fit this description and you're listening to this, like, obviously this doesn't apply to you, great, pat yourself on the back and smile that you are a good person. But if you feel like you have to come in and say, well, it's not all, it never is all. It never is all cops are bad. It never is all, black boys are loiterers. It never is all gays are mad. It never is all of one community, because everybody is so different. But it's the majority that accounts, or even the few that accounts. It doesn't even have to be the majority. It can be the few that accounts, that genuinely just put this label and this stereotype. And yeah, labels suck and stereotypes are bad, but if we're listing, and this is something that everybody needs to learn to understand, if you're listing a set of traits, just because you associate one group with it doesn't mean, again, that all of that group fits it. It means that those in that group that associate with those traits are the ones that associate with those traits. So just because someone generalizes doesn't mean that you have to come in with your superhero cape and defend it and be like, oh, well, we're not all like that. Congratulations. If you think you aren't, look internally and try again, mama, because it's not something that always has to be defended. You don't always have to come in and be like, well, I don't think you should generalize and I don't think you should blah, blah, blah. especially if it's coming from a hypocritical place of being someone that does generalize everything, but once you hear a generalization that pertains to you and you don't want it to pertain to you, so you're trying to make it seem like you're protecting the rest in your group that it pertains to, you've got a problem. I don't want to hear it, and I'm like so sick of it, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Back to what I was saying, in general, the gaslighting, it's like go through all these things, and they do all these things to us and make women feel less than, and then when we complain about and speak upon and about feminism, here come the men, oh, you're not oppressed, oh, we treat you equally, oh, this, oh, that, and try to bring up these itty-bitty, absolutely tiny, bare minimum things that, or situations that we are equal or we are oppressed. And when I tell you these situations are so rare, like, you can't pull up stuff like that. And again, that's where that gaslighting comes in. It's like, you're constantly oppressing me. It's a generational thing where your group is oppressing, whether it's institutionalized, whether it's internally, whether it's one person or a group of people, whatever it is, it's happening. And by default, you're a part of that. And especially if you're not doing anything to stop it, you can't complain about the generalization. But doing that, having all of that happen, and then coming back to say, oh, feminism isn't needed, women aren't oppressed, you're fine. I don't know what signs you're looking at, sweetie, but first of all, you can't tell me how I feel because you're not a female. And second, it's ridiculous for you to say that with the, oh my God, the many occasions proven in history, on text, and right in your eyes in the real world that women are oppressed and we are constantly being put down to the lowest level possible so that men can rule and be happy and go to bed at the end of the night with their chests a bit bigger, their egos a bit bigger, and just feeling great about themselves because they conquered something today, they won something, and it was all fine and dandy. But to then do all of that and then just say, oh, you're not oppressed, you're fine, that's where the gaslighting comes in. So it starts with misogyny, being misogynistic, and then gaslighting that the misogyny ever happened. No, it didn't happen. You're crazy. You're not oppressed. You're fine. I had one guy from one of my classes a few years ago. At the beginning of quarantine, when everything started spiraling out and everybody had a reason to be upset, he said something. I don't remember what he said. I don't even remember what I posted, but he slid up on my story. And first of all, he said something along the lines of, I'm all for the gays, but, and let me tell you, I don't ever address me or anybody else with, I'm all for insert but, because if you have to put a but, you're not all for it. So just don't hit me with that ever. But he said, I'm all for gays, but I don't think they should have an entire month while veterans have a weekend. And I said, well, first of all, honey, to address that part of his paragraph, I was like, well, first of all, honey, gays don't choose their sexuality. Veterans choose to go risk their lives. They know the risk factors. It is a job, not a birth thing. It is not something they are born with. It is not something they are born and have to do. They chose that. Even the ones that were drafted and didn't choose it, that is a historical thing. That is something the government chose. And that is something that trickled down because of who they voted for. So either way, it was their fault. Their government may have drafted them, but you know who they voted in that place and who their government was voted in by? Them. So again, it's a choice, and it was the rankings and the stack of things that came because of their actions. But being gay is not a choice. It's something that you're born with. And so I don't want to hear I'm all for gays, but oh, they shouldn't have a month while veterans have a weekend. Shut up. Because obviously you're not all for it. And I don't understand where the correlation between all of that comes. And then he proceeded to say, also, feminism is just an excuse for women to downgrade men or to be better than men or to, what did he say? To downgrade men's rights. And I said, no, he did not just say that. I looked at my phone. I had to turn it off and open it back up to make sure I wasn't crazy. And I was like, if this conservative little white boy does not get out of my DMs, I swear I'm gonna light someone on fire. Because reading that, oh, that sent me spiraling. And the absolute best thing about that was that was one of my friend's ex-boyfriends. So the first thing I did was go to her and send her the screenshots, and we had a whole conversation about it. And I was like, you will never guess what your little white conservative just said to me. I was like, I don't even remember what I responded to him, but I blocked him on all social media. I sent something, and then I blocked him because I was like, I don't even want to hear what else you have to say. I just don't want to hear it, because how do people genuinely think like that? Like, I don't understand. It is so baffling, and I need a stronger word because I'm tired of using that one. It's just not strong enough. It's just genuinely baffling that, like, people think like that. And wow, yeah, that was a no for me. I was like, if this little white conservative boy does not get out of my DMs, I'm gonna light something on fire. But yeah, those are, just a few of my experiences of misogyny, gaslighting, internalized patriarchy, all that disgusting stuff. It's just ridiculous. And it's, oh man. It's insane. Like, it's just genuinely crazy that, like, wow, there are really people out there that think like this. That's scary. Man, yeah. I swear, one day, the purge is gonna come, and I'm gonna be scared. I'm not gonna be out in the streets. I'm gonna be in my house. But the purge is gonna come, and that's, oh my god. I'm laughing. It's not funny at all. It's just scary, and I don't know what else to do about it than laugh. Because there are genuinely people out there that are just totally against anyone that's not themselves, or any set of traits that they don't have. It's crazy. And then there are even hypocrites out there that have these traits and still go against others that have the same traits, because they're not ready to reconcile with the fact that they are one and the same. And that's, again, insane, and it baffles me. Whew. I can't. Living hurts too much. Living in this disgusting world, it hurts way too much. Wow. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think that's all I've got for you guys on that note. Let me know if you guys want a part 2. Let me know if there's something that I didn't touch on that you want me to rant about. And, yeah, I'm totally down to do a part 2 to this. I love having these conversations. It's frustrating. It's infuriating. I want to scream, but they're conversations that need to be had. And, again, if you're a guy or a man listening to this and you didn't fit, or you don't think you fit any of the criteria of what was said, obviously you are exempt from the generalization or whatever. Go ahead, pat yourself on the back. But since nobody is perfect, everybody has a bit of internalized or externalized even misogyny, internalized patriarchy, or has gaslighted at least once in their life. Nobody's perfect. Everybody's done it. At this point, it's not about beating yourself up about who you were in the past, what you've done in the past, how you've messed up. Take this day forward, learn about it, research, figure out what your internalizations are, and fix them. Fix them within yourself. The next time you see your friend or hear your friend say something to his girlfriend or his female classmate or his coworker, call him out and tell him you're wrong. And that's another thing too, is instead of sitting here and something I've seen a lot, especially on social media, in comments of like posts about misogyny and stuff, is men playing tit for tat. Shut up. Like, instead of you coming out here just trying to double back and be like, oh, you call me out for this, well, at least I don't blah blah blah. Shut up. And instead of saying, being the first one to be like, I don't do that, I don't fit that criteria, that's not me, how about you say, you know what, I maybe I don't do that, but I know someone who does, and the next time I hear him do it, I'm gonna call him out. Or you know what, I've got enough on him right now, I'm gonna call him, text him, and be like, hey, you know, I've been hearing a lot about misogyny and gaslighting, and I noticed that you do that. And I think we need to do better as men. And I'm having this conversation with you right now so that you can have this conversation with another one of your friends. I'm going to go have this conversation with another one of my friends. And we're going to fix this in our circle. And hopefully that's going to spread so that when we have kids and if we have sons, we'll teach them what not to do. And this will be on the list of that. It's just, oh, they're so quick to defend themselves. But instead of defending yourself and playing, you know, woe is me and oh my god, I'm exempt, I'm special, I'm above all of this, how about you just shut up and say, you know what, I know someone that acts like that, or shoot, I act like that, and it's annoying, or it might be difficult for me to change, or it's going to be uncomfortable for me to sit with myself and accept the fact that I've been gaslighting people my whole life, but I'm going to do it anyway because this needs to change. Like, just, yeah. Something's got to give. Something's got to change. Something's got to change. A lot has got to change, obviously. But that's got to be on the list of things. Like, just do better. Just do better. And, again, stop trying to, like, pity and victimize yourself. Like, oh my god, I don't fit this description. Great. Go find someone who does and correct them. Yeah. Something's gotta give. And much like the whole, like, blacks educating whites situation, no, do it yourself. Like, women, I've said this so much, I shouldn't have to babysit a guy or a man. Like, whether it's someone in my class, whether it's a guy friend, whether it's a relationship with somebody, like, I never want to have to babysit a man and teach him how he should be treating women. You got so many resources. You got a phone. Go Google what misogyny is. Figure it out. Figure out how you internalize it and fix it within yourself, and then go and fix it in your community. Like, I shouldn't have to sit here and be like, okay, this is what misogyny is. Let me hold your hand while I walk you through it, and you can cry when you realize that this is something that you do. Like, no, go figure it out. You got so many resources. Do the research and do it yourself. I literally just sat here and in looking up 2 articles have put so much together, and there's so much more to put together. But again, I'm not the one that should be putting it together. I understand it perfectly fine. Like, I'm experiencing it. We all experience it as women at some point, or will, or have, whatever. But, like, it's not for me to be putting the puzzle pieces together because it's not for me to fix. And that's another common problem in society. We're always pointing the fingers at the wrong person to fix situations. I stand so strongly by this, and I mean this when I say this. You should never have to clean up anybody else's messes but your own. Period. Mic drop. Because it's like, imagine, I don't know how many of you listening to this have siblings, right? Whether you currently live with your siblings, whether you haven't lived with your siblings for 5, 10, 20, 30 years, whatever. If you have siblings, especially if you're the older siblings, let me talk to my older siblings for a minute. You know, your younger siblings are kind of like your kids, right? Constantly clean up after them, constantly did household chores, right? And it's annoying. It's so annoying to clean up after other people. And I've said this recently. I was like, I used to always say I hate dishes. I don't hate doing dishes. I hate doing other people's dirty dishes because I hate cleaning up other people's mess. I'm like sitting here going through, picking, plates off the table, throwing away dirty tissues and sauce packets and caked on stuff on plates that could have been washed off by someone else. And that bothers me. Like, I should never have to clean up anybody else's messes. I shouldn't have to clean up anybody's room, anything like that. And it's the same in society. Females shouldn't have to clean up misogyny and gaslighting. Men need to do it. Blacks shouldn't have to clean up racism, systemic, internalized, personal, externalized, whatever. Whites need to do that. Supremacists need to clean up supremacy. Like, stop pointing fingers at the wrong group to clean up what the mess of what the other group made, because that's not how it works. And that's also something that needs to happen if we're going to fix any and all of these societal issues. Like, start pointing the fingers at the right people, start holding the right people accountable, and start pointing fingers at yourself and making sure that this isn't a problem within yourself. And if it's not, great. Don't go and victimize yourself when you get generalized. Go find someone else who fits the description of the generalization and go tell them they're wrong, straight up. We gotta change. We gotta do better. And I think we all know it by now. But it's for sure, and it's real, and it's gotta go. It's just gotta go. Especially if you're talking about, like, at school, in the workplace, like, yeah, just any and everywhere. It's just gotta go. But other than that, I think that is all I've got for you guys today. My mouth is so dry. I've been trying to drink green tea throughout this whole thing, and it's not working. I actually think it's making my mouth drier, so I need to go get some water. I might record next week's episode in like 5 minutes. I'm not sure. But other than that, I will see you guys or hear you guys next week. I, from now on, am putting these episodes on YouTube so you can go watch an audiogram/video version, and eventually, who knows what time in the future, but when I get a vlog camera, I will set up and you guys can see me talking if that is something that interests you. But yeah, go check that out. It's just Growing Up Wildflower on YouTube. I will have it linked in the show notes and the description. All my socials will be linked down there as well. Go check out my YouTube channels, my Instagram. If you go on my Linktree, you can see my print shop, my portfolio, everything like that. All the goods, and find me on every platform and learn more about me if you so choose. Other than that, I will hear you guys next week. And I love you. Thank you so much for listening. And yeah, that's it. Wildflower out.